Ivanti Neurons for IIoT uses scenarios to automate tasks. When something happens or a certain condition is met, a task is performed. For example, you can trigger a scenario when a form is submitted, when a file is added to a specific directory on the server, when an IoT lock is unlocked, or when something is published to a specific MQTT topic. This video introduces using scenarios for automation and gives some examples of how to create and use scenarios. When you log in to Ivanti Neurons for IIoT, click Automation, Scenarios to build a scenario. When you build scenarios, you position the actions on a canvas. You can group multiple scenarios on the same canvas, or create a new canvas for each scenario. We'll create a new canvas here. Canvases can be locked to prevent other people from editing them, or set to a draft state so that they don't actually run. The list on the left provides the blocks you can drag into place to detect events and execute actions. Usually you'll start with a detector block to determine when something is changed that triggers your scenario. Let's start with a basic scenario. When the server gets a submission for the velocity form forklift checklist, I want to send a message to an administrator. Messages in the platform are shown at the top right corner of the console next to your account icon. So to build it, start with the detector block for form. I'll set it so that it only acts when the forklift checklist form is submitted. Now I'll add a message block. Under Contacts Recipients, we'll grab the Users block. And then under Definition Text, we'll use two text blocks to create the title and contents. As you can see, the blocks snap together to create the scenario. When you're done, click Save, and the scenario will run each time the server receives a submission for the forklift checklist form. You can see that the blocks are organized on the side based on how they work. For example, the detector blocks detect when something has happened that you want to trigger an action. Actuator blocks perform an action, something that happens on the server or something specific to a device. Let's create another scenario and introduce you to the simulator. When the customer service button is pressed, I want to turn the customer service required light on so that any associates nearby know there is a customer waiting at the service desk. This scenario requires that I have an IoT button and an IoT light. Start with a detector block for button. Select the customer service button from the list and make sure that the action that triggers the scenario is when the button is pressed. The block for light is under Actuators. Drag that so it snaps into the Do area, then use the drop-down menus to turn on the customer service required light for 5 minutes. To test this scenario, I'm going to save my work and then click Simulation. The simulator gives you a chance to test what happens when specific MQTT messages are sent or received. I'm going to pretend that my customer service button sends an MQTT message that it was pressed. I make sure the button is shown in the drop-down here and then choose which action happens. You can see that the simulator shows a timestamp for when the button was pressed and then that the light came on. The simulator can be especially handy if you don't want to walk around your warehouse in order to test scenarios out. You should be aware, though, that the MQTT message is actually sent and the light did turn on. That part isn't simulated. Now that you've seen some of the basics, you can start to build your own scenarios.